Hi, I'm Loris Alexander. This is Bridge City News, and here are some of the top stories we've been following. A medical examiner and forensic pathologist blame police pressure for George Floyd's death. Plus, a Canadian hosts an international martial arts demonstration. And Buckingham Palace announces that Prince Philip's funeral will be held on April 17th.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Thanks for joining us. Dr. Andrew Baker, the chief medical examiner who ruled George Floyd's death a homicide, testified Friday that the way police held him down and compressed his neck was just more than Mr. Floyd could take, given the condition of his heart.
You know he had very severe underlying heart disease. I don't know that we specifically got to it, Counselor, but Mr. Floyd also had what we call hypertensive heart disease, meaning his heart weighed more than it should. So he has a heart that already needs more oxygen than a normal heart by virtue of its size, and it's limited in its ability to step up to provide more oxygen when there's demand because of the narrowing of his coronary arteries. Now, in the context of an altercation with other people that involves things like physical restraint, that involves things like being held to the ground, that involves things like the pain that you would incur from having your cheek up against the asphalt, an abrasion on your shoulder, those events are going to cause stress hormones to pour out into your body, specifically things like adrenaline. And what that adrenaline is going to do is it's going to ask your heart to beat faster. It's going to ask your body for more oxygen so that you can get through that altercation. And in my opinion, the law enforcement subdual restraint and the neck compression was just more than Mr. Floyd could take by virtue of those heart conditions.
Kevin Olson of Edmonton has been practicing Taekwondo for 35 years. He says martial artists around the world have been devastated they can't train due to the pandemic. That's why he has organized a demonstration called Break for a Breakthrough. More than 100 martial artists from around the world, including India, Poland, and Malaysia, broke board to re-energize and snap out of their pandemic fatigue.
Yeah, so board breaking is a test of skill, mental and physical skill. It's a test of speed and accuracy and commitment because it puts the person under pressure. You're out of your comfort zone, and that is a beautiful place because that's how we grow. So the pandemic has had a massive negative effect on martial arts training across the board. Every single martial arts school around the world has lost students. And a lot of those people, unfortunately, will not come back. So I saw this as an opportunity to get some of those people at least engaged again in training and bring them back and get them fired up.
Britain's Prince Charles paid a personal tribute on Saturday to his dear papa, Prince Philip, saying the royal family missed him enormously and that the 99-year-old would have been amazed at the touching reaction to his death from around the world. Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth, who had been at her side throughout her record-breaking 69-year reign, died at Windsor Castle on Friday at the age of 99. Buckingham Palace announced that the funeral for Philip would be held on April 17th and that the Queen's grandson, Prince Harry, who now lives in the United States, would attend. Harry's wife, Meghan Markle, who is pregnant with their second child, will not attend on doctor's advice, according to the palace. Working from home has become the standard for many businesses during the pandemic. Oftentimes, employees have become comfortable in their routines, and according to Stats Canada, 80% of employees forced to work from home during the pandemic say that they'd like to spend at least half of their hours working from home moving forward. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly shares how things are trending locally and how news agencies like Bridge City News are adapting to the new normal as well.
BCN, among other news agencies, are not exempt from safely working from home. The news meeting on Discord. Interviews are conducted over Zoom. Even stories in the teleprompter can be written remotely. Officials from the Business Council of Alberta say that employee feedback has been mixed. Some are eager to return to the office. Others want both, and many don't want to go back ever.
Even if there's 10% that find themselves working from home permanently, that could be a really significant change in the way our workforce works.
People working from home means more vacancies in commercial real estate. Calgary already is among the most vacancies in the country, but Lethbridge doesn't seem to have that problem.
Most of our agricultural businesses are still performing well. Most of our, office companies, although they might have staff working remotely, still see value in that presence. So we have not seen the impacts on our local commercial real estate markets as yet. We've probably in the last couple of years had 4 or 5 different inquiries looking for 15 to 20,000 square feet of warehousing space. And we've literally had nothing available.
And with many choosing to work from home,
there's been huge and increasing demand for single family homes, like a home with a yard versus people wanting to live in condos and things like that. And people are preferring to live in the kinds of places, if they're going to be spending more time in them, the kinds of places that they'd like to spend more time. They're prioritizing space and yards. Now, I think that could be very positive for an attractive community like Lethbridge.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Alberta officials announced that our province will head back to step 1 of the COVID-19 economic relaunch. The Lethbridge Public Library will be returning to their curbside pickup model for now. The library is also celebrating a special day with Library Giving Day, which is a national fundraising event started in Seattle in 2019 to support local libraries.
Anything that's donated will go towards supporting our programs and services year-round. And as well as donating online, you can also, we have a special initiative we're launching today in partnership with Cuppers Coffee. They have made a special library blend. So if you go into Cuppers, you can pick up a blend called Reader's Roast, and a portion of that will come back to the library for every bag purchased. And that's going to be available starting today, and they will have it ongoing for the next couple of months.
Last year, over 20,000 people had a library card at the Lethbridge Public Library. They were able to access over 800,000 books and physical items in the system. The Nanton Quality of Life Foundation is hoping to increase the well-being of seniors with dementia, including Alzheimer's, by providing a music and memory program. As Micah Quinn explains, organizers say this program helps stimulate the brains of seniors who need it the most.
The Nanton Legion branch awarded funding to the Nanton Quality of Life Foundation to start up the Music and Memory program in 2017. The program works by giving seniors a personalized playlist filled with music on an iPod Shuffle that can then be played on headphones or a speaker at their homes.
It brings back fond memories, and it makes them so much happier. And there's lots of research on the fact that, music can help you with depression and sundowning. And it's just a great program, a great outlet for those individuals.
The program isn't able to go into senior facilities due to the pandemic, but the foundation has found other ways of spreading the word.
However, in the last year, we have had a couple of families come in to our office, and we have told them about the Music and Memory program. And they have given us a list of the music that their loved one would like. And we were able to hook them up with the program right away. So although it is slow to start, there are a few people still in the lodge who are doing it, and a few people that are living on their own who are engaging in the program.
Lori Fyander is a community support worker for the foundation, and she says that this program gives seniors and their families more time to interact with each other.
It really kind of brings them out of their shell. It's like smell or sound will take you back to a certain time. And then when they do kind of come forward, it gives them more time to be together and spend more time together.
For more information on the Music and Memory program, you can call the Nanton Quality of Life Foundation. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Recapping one of our top news stories. Kevin Olson of Edmonton has organized a demonstration called Break for a Breakthrough. More than 100 martial artists from around the world, including India, Poland, and Malaysia, broke aboard to re-energize and snap out of their pandemic fatigue. And a look at weekend weather. Rain showers tonight with a risk of a thunderstorm this evening, changing to flurries and ending after midnight, and a low of -3. A mix of sun and cloud tomorrow with 30% chance of flurries in the morning and a high of +4.
Today's weather is brought to you by ColumbianDirect.com. Café Coffee, specialty coffee from our family to yours.
Coming up, we hear from a Lethbridge College researcher who's making waves in the area of microbiology. She tells us why it's better to use phytobiotics instead of antibiotics on farm animals. That's coming up right after the break. Stay with us.
If you've ever been seriously ill, you're likely thankful for antibiotics. However, they can have side effects, and we're seeing more and more antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which has researchers busy trying to find some solutions. Joining me is Dr. Sophie Kernies, a microbiology researcher at Lethbridge College. Prior to moving to Lethbridge, she was a tenured research scientist at the Pasteur Institute in Paris, where she developed a unique experimental model of a cell in the intestinal tract. Her published work is used all around the world, and we're so happy to have her with us today. Dr. Kernies, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. So first of all, can you explain what antibiotics are and how they're typically produced?
Okay, so antibiotics are molecules, drugs, like penicillin, for example, that are used to treat some bacterial infection. So it's something that is very important because if you have an infection due to a virus, for example, you will not take an antibiotic. These molecules are produced by bacteria and fungi. And so probably you have heard about penicillin produced by fungi or tetracycline. So this is what we have today on the market.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us why we're seeing an increase in antibiotic-resistant bacteria? Why is this such a problem?
It's a big problem. And so I know that today we have a pandemic due to these coronaviruses, but the World Health Organization is basically pushing and to do something to avoid having another big issue with this antibiotic resistant crisis. And so the antibiotic resistant bacteria, first, they were always present on Earth. Even Alexander Fleming, who discovered the first antibiotic, the penicillin, was able to see them and to see this problem, but it was very, very mild. This antibiotic-resistant bacteria are bacteria that are not killed anymore by the antibiotics, and it's because they have mutations. But the thing that we have today is that because we have used antibiotics since 1940, so a long time, we have selected antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and we have more and more. If we use more antibiotics, you will select more antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And this bacteria, I need to add two more things. One, they divide very quickly. So for E. coli, it will be 20 minutes. So imagine that. And the other thing is that they have a very big, high plasticity, genetic plasticity. So they can exchange genes basically between each other. So if you have one bacteria that is resistant, it can go to another kind and another kind. So it's why we have now today with this big crisis due to this antibiotic resistant bacteria.
That is fascinating stuff for sure.
Yeah.
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 Now, for the last number of years, you've been leading a project at Lethbridge College called the Antibiotics Alberta Plant Project, which is focused on studying plants native to Alberta to see if they can be used to produce new antibiotics, right? So what specific types of plants are you looking at or looking for?
Well, I would say, all the plants that we have here could be interesting. And the reason for that is that, as I said before, the antibiotics that we have on the market are only produced by bacteria and fungi. And everyone knows that plants have been used in a traditional way here by the First Nation people, but all over the planet, they were using the plants to treat, their disease, infection, or over disease. And so we took this approach of saying, okay, now we should take the plants and try to see if we could isolate some molecules, and that could be the next generation of antibiotics, because as we discussed before, antibiotic resistant bacteria are a very, very big problem. And one of the solutions is to find more antibiotic, new ones, because it's kind of a run, the bacteria we will select more and more of this antibiotic resistant bacteria, but if we have more and more new antibiotics, we can basically face these issues. So yeah, so any plants could be a good candidate.
Definitely. So you were mentioning that they were used by Aboriginal people to treat sickness. So do we know for a fact if some of these plants were fairly effective?
So there are some reports and it's First Nation from here or from or in Canada or around the world. So yes, absolutely, they were using some plants like clover to treat certain type of infection. So of course, before we had not this test to say, oh, we have an infection that is due to a staphylococcus or something like that. So, but because wound, easy to see, it's for us, it's a bit easier than to say, okay, they have been using these plants to treat wounds. So we can suppose that this was because they were due by a bacterial infection or a fungal infection also. So we will basically, use this information and to guide a bit also our research.
Okay. So how can you determine whether or not a plant will be effective?
So we have some techniques that are now in the lab. They are well established in the lab. So we have been using this technique since 2016. So when we started the project at the college in Lethbridge. And so in a very simple way, you need to put a bacteria in contact with a plant. And we have a way to find out if the bacteria is growing. It's by measuring the optical density, but it's okay. So we can put the bacteria and the plants together and follow that over a period of 18 hours, for example. And then we can see that certain plants are basically avoiding the bacteria to grow completely. So you will have the same kind of result as the one that we could get with a known antibiotic like kanamycin that we use as a positive control. So so the technique is in place, and we have students helping us to do that.
That's incredible. So what kind of progress have you made so far? Have you found any molecules that could be used as antibiotics?
Yeah, we found some molecules. So this is also in collaboration with chemists. So we have a collaboration with Professor Raymond Anderson in UBC, who is helping us with this part of the project, because in science everyone has their specialty, and so is the plants that are the most interesting for us are sent to UBC, and then they do the fractionation, and we were able to isolate some molecules from some interesting plants. So this is one of the contribution that we hope to get. So from all the plants that are tested positive for different bacteria, then we hope to get more and more molecules with the hope that after we will have an antibiotic.
That's fascinating. Now, I understand that you've found a new phenotype introduced by plants. So what is it and how can it be used for our health?
So this was observed more recently. So it was with students that are working in the lab. We observed that for certain plants, we see something that we call the clumping. Like an aggregate, like a big chunk of bacteria sticking together kind of around the plants. And so so we have a student, Nadia, and who is from the University of Lethbridge. She's doing her own thesis with us, and she is very interested, and she wants to continue doing a master in the lab, so it will be great. And so we are studying this new phenotype, as it would be interesting for different applications, such as trying to remove bacteria in the water. The contamination in the water, for example, in feedlots, but also the water that we have in the river could be eventually more clean with plants that are clumping, the bacteria, maybe over application in cosmetics. So this would be some opening for the future.
Right. Now, we're, of course, in southern Alberta, which is, agriculture is a huge industry here. So can you tell us about some local plants that apparently contain phytobiotics, which can be used to naturally promote growth in certain farm animals?
Yeah, so this is another. So we have different direction in the lab, and one of the direction is the phytobiotics, because basically, to give a very quick definition, they are plant extracts that have some activities, and so we are looking always for antibiotic activities. So it's known that some plants like oregano or thyme are used to prevent the infection, and we want to basically bring some new phytobiotics from the plants that are growing in Alberta, but also the plants that are given to the animals. And the reason for that is that the farmers don't have access to antibiotics since 2018 to prevent the infection as they were doing before, which is causing quite of some issues, because the antibiotics are helping them to prevent infection and also to promote the growth of the animals. So by finding, and we have many plant extracts that are active against, for example, Staphylococcus aureus, that is one of the bacteria that they want to control. We want to bring that to the farmers, that they can continue to produce the food, the food animals, or to produce the proteins that we need to feed us, basically. Yeah? So this can be an interesting project to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Dr. Kernes, your research also has the possibility of using plants to make natural preservatives for cosmetics. So which plants would be used for this, and what is it about them that would act as a preservative specifically for cosmetics?
So yeah, so cosmetics. So we are in collaboration with a small cosmetic company in Alberta, and so we are thinking and exchanging this problem that they have. Cosmetics is we put makeup and cream, and so we basically put your hands on the cream and put that on your face, and your hands are containing a lot of microbes. So basically, it will contaminate the product, that can have some effect on the life shelf of the product, and also can eventually cause some infections. So they are using preservatives in their products like paraben, but we want to try to find some more natural approach for that. So bringing the plants that we have found in the lab that contain some antibiotic activities to them, and putting that in their product. So we hope that in the very near future, we will be able to bring that and have a line of cosmetics containing some natural product coming from Alberta. So this could serve the cosmetic here, but after that maybe a bit wider around the world.
Oh yeah, well, I would be all about that, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's what the people want, to go more natural, not having some chemicals that can cause some issues.
Yeah, absolutely. So any idea how long this process would take to find these, natural effective antibiotics? How long would that take?
Well, depending. If it is an antibiotic that, like penicillin, for example, just to give you an idea, for Alexander Fleming, it took him 12 years, which was, the first thing was because, this was the starting point. So you had to convince people. But and we see with coronaviruses, with the vaccine, it takes time to put a drug on the market because we want to make sure that it's really, really safe. So maybe it will take, normally it's about 10 years. But I think it's still very important that we start today to have some antibiotics in the near future. If it is phytobiotics for animals, I think it can take much less time. We hope to, feed the animals with this product, with these plants. And for the cosmetics also, maybe, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 years, and we will have some plant extract in for the livestock or for the cosmetics.
Yeah, that would be so interesting, especially if we can see it available at our local pharmacy. So even in terms of a plant-based antibiotic, any idea as to how long we can see that available at our local pharmacy?
I don't know, hopefully 10 years maybe, and we have to start, and this is the World Health Organization who is pushing to say, okay, we need to find new antibiotics because the pharmaceutical industry basically quit a bit this topic because it's not very rewarding in terms of money. You develop an antibiotic, it's quite expensive, and then you will have antibiotic-resistant bacteria coming up quite quickly. But still, we don't want to arrive to this situation where they say that if we don't do anything by 2050, we will have 10 million of people dying of this antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which is huge. Today, we have 700,000 worldwide, which is a lot, less than what we had for COVID. But we need to do something today.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. Thank you so much for your expertise, Dr. Kernes. Dr. Sophie Kernes is a microbiology researcher at Lethbridge College. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Janet.
The Alberta economy is still going through some pretty tough times. We have the recession, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the lockdowns. But how has this really impacted the real estate market? To talk a bit more about it, talking about buying and selling here in southwestern Alberta, is Sean Ormston, CEO of Great Rate Realty. Sean, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Now, Sean, we all know how devastated the oil and gas sector has been. It's really impacted real estate and businesses in Calgary, Red Deer, but not as much here in southwestern Alberta. We're more agriculture based. Have you noticed a bit of a difference with the economy, especially when it comes to buying and selling a property?
No, I have noticed even over the years, as the economy goes in southern Alberta, we're pretty consistent, and that's a good thing because people can rely on stability in the market, and that's something that hopefully they can plan for. We like to plan for things, and it's nice to have stability in the market. So we get that in southern Alberta.
So what are we at right now in Lethbridge specifically? Are we seeing more of a buyer's or a seller's market right now?
Well, it's interesting. If you look at the last decade, we've probably been mostly in a buyer's market, but we are transitioning. Some of the power is now falling to the sellers, and we can see that. I was looking at some numbers today. We've got home sales that are up about 50% this year so far. Wow. From last year's numbers. We have sale price of an average of $320,000, and last year where it was $285,000. So we have about a 12% increase in sale price as well. So things are on the up and up.
Well, that's good news. Now, let's talk about some of the bigger markets in Canada. We've seen massive increases in property values, including what we see in Vancouver and Toronto. But what about Lethbridge? Do you see more of a slow, steady increase, maybe 2 to 3 points per year when it comes to building equity?
What we've seen in the past is up years and down years, very, very small, 1%, 2%. So not a lot changes. Sometimes we get 2%, 3%. We can string together a few years where it feels like we're getting a lift, and then we might have kind of a balancing that, things balance out. But this year, this is the time we're seeing, like I said, a 12% increase in the first sort of 3 months of the year, 2.5 months since we've got going this year.
Now, we've seen record low interest rates, Sean, under 2 points for a 5-year closed mortgage. Do you think this trend will continue? What are your thoughts?
Well, we were seeing interest rates. We've got some mortgage brokers in our office. We were seeing rates getting down as low as 1.5%, which was unbelievable only in the last month. However, we've seen money also flow into the bond market recently. When money flows into the bond market, that's what drives interest rates higher. And, things are around that 2% that you mentioned. But I think we'll see that for a sustained period of time, as the Bank of Canada seems to always announce that their interest rate is on hold, at least in recent months, recent years. I anticipate that interest rates will remain low for a sustained period of time.
Is a variable rate mortgage still a good option in our current market?
I always tell people, consult with your bank, consult with your mortgage broker when looking at rates. If you look historically, it always seemed that variable rates were better, but the margin to me, in my opinion, is so thin on variable rate mortgage now. It doesn't seem like it would make a lot of sense to choose a variable rate over a fixed rate.
Now, I locked in my mortgage a couple of years ago, a 5-year close for 2.79%. I thought, hey, that's a pretty good buy, pretty good deal, right? More goes to the principal, less to the interest. Is it maybe a good time right now to renegotiate a blended mortgage with rates so low to try and get closer to that 2% mark?
Every mortgage, from what I've learned from mortgage brokers sort of informing me, is a little bit different. And there are penalties in each mortgage. There are prices that you have to pay to get out of these products. So when it comes to refinancing, I think you have to be very careful. You have to meet with your mortgage professional, meet with your bank, and really run the numbers to make sure that it's a good idea to either refinance or step into a blended product.
Now, you mentioned earlier the average price is around $320,000. So I guess people that have homes, $250,000 to $300,000, they're selling a lot faster?
Yeah, we're starting to see the days on market and the inventory drop, especially in the $200,000 to $400,000 range, where affordability is apparent. Even though the homes above $400,000, we're also seeing a jump in the number of units sold. I just had a look at those numbers, and those numbers are quite staggering. Last year to this point, there were 32 homes that sold. This year in Lethbridge, this year there are 77. So a jump of about 140%. So it sounds like a big number. Prices are about the same. I looked at an average about $477,000 for $485,000 for those homes that are in the upper price range. But as you mentioned, most homes are selling in the $200,000 to $400,000 range, and they're selling in fewer days on market this year than last year.
So what do you attribute the hot market to? Is it that maybe people are working from home more often now? They want bigger office space? Is they're working maybe a hybrid? What are people telling you right now?
I think it's a combination of things. The interest rates being low are fantastic. That's something that people can really get excited about, because they can lock in a low rate and have lower payments as long as they qualify at the stress test that is put in place by the government. I think the pandemic has made a lot of people realize, or a lot of people have been forced to work from home. And so while they sit in their houses, they're thinking about, gee, I need more space, or, we really need to have a spot for the office, or something like that, where people might have a continued period of time where they are working from home. And thirdly, which I don't think a lot of people talk about, is we also have a large group of buyers, younger buyers, that are sort of coming of age into the market. Many of these buyers are, we might refer them as millennial buyers. They're under 35 years old right now, but a lot of them went to school. They had school debt to pay off. They had to wait a little later in life to buy homes. And now we have a large demographic that I believe is coming into the market in all centers, ready to buy their first home, somewhere between the age of 30 and 35 years old.
Let's talk about different areas of Lethbridge, which seem to be more popular. I know people here that work at the station, they love the north side. Other people prefer the south side with the big trees, the bigger lots, but you get older homes. And then still there are others who love the west side because the newer homes, and you're close to the ATB Center. And it seems to be more high density on the west side. What are you seeing right now?
Well, it's interesting. The west side has definitely grown the biggest in Lethbridge. There are as many people on the west side of Lethbridge now as there are on the north and the south combined. Wow. So a lot of the growth in the city over the past year has been on the west side. That's what really propelled this city into a 100,000 plus population, as we've seen that growth. So people are choosing to live over there that want those newer homes, want those newer neighborhoods. There are newer neighborhoods, of course, on the north and south. Typically, the west side gives people a really good bang for their buck, and amenities have been developing on the west side. To your point about the ATB Center and the shopping that's come as the years have gone by.
You know, it's funny, I live on the west side and we're saying, we need a Walmart. You know, we need a Walmart superstore there. And so, you know, we've been campaigning for that. I kind of envy people on the south side because you got all of the amenities right there. It's amazing. And the beautiful mature trees. I really love that. Sean, during the COVID-19 pandemic, are people a little hesitant to venture out to open houses or maybe showings right now? What are you seeing?
You know, there's been really good leadership and guidance from the Alberta Real Estate Association on how to handle viewings during the COVID pandemic. Obviously, everybody's worried about, contact and services. So the Alberta Real Estate Association has mandated that realtors, when showing homes, only bring 2 people with them on each showing. And so if you have a party, even kids involved, we're swapping people out of, in and out of the house to make sure everybody gets to see the home that needs to see the home, whether that's the buyers, the parents, whoever. We're only taking in 2 people at a time. Everybody's masked up, everybody's sanitizing. We advise sellers to leave all the lights on, all the interior doors open, to limit the touching of surfaces. So I think everybody in our industry has done a really good job to pay attention to what we can do as licensed real estate agents, as well as follow the guidance of the Alberta Real Estate Association to make sure we're keeping people safe.
Now, you mentioned stress tests earlier, Sean. Talk a bit about stress tests and the tougher mortgage requirements. How do they actually work?
Well, I have a love-hate relationship with the stress test as a realtor, and I understand why the government put it in. They put in an interest rate that is more expensive to qualify at. So what they're trying to do is protect people from borrowing too much money. However, as a realtor, I get concerned that there could be some overstepping because the interest rates are so low today. People can lock in money, like we talked about, around 2%. And so I've ran some numbers with the mortgage brokers who are in my office next door, and we've looked at things, and for a 5% down buyer, they're losing about 30% buying power on the price of the home they can purchase because they're having to qualify for the stress test. And that's difficult in a place like Southern Alberta. I wish that the government would take an approach to stress testing for the much higher dollar value homes where it does matter. And I'm not saying where it has to be 500,000, maybe $1 million, whatever it is. We are seeing markets like Toronto and Vancouver where prices are north of $1 million for an average home. And that's just not the case in Southern Alberta, like we talked about. Average so far for the year is 320,000.
Have you seen what you get in Vancouver, though, for $1 million or $1.5 million? You don't get a lot. It's a little bungalow, maybe 700 square foot, built in the 60s. It's a fixer-upper. Think about what you can get here in Lethbridge in southwestern Alberta for $1 million. Now, Sean, if the stress test was removed altogether for the more stable markets like we have here in Lethbridge, how much of a difference do you think that would make for buyers?
Well, I think it would make a huge difference. Like I said, it's about, for your 5% down buyers, people coming into the market, first-time home buyers, it's about 30% more buying power. So, a $300,000 mortgage purchase could be a $400,000 purchase. It's that much of a difference. And there is a big difference in the quality and caliber of home from $300,000 to $400,000. Now, would we expect the market to also lift in prices? Absolutely, we would. So it's just, we're in the same boat though as everybody else. Everybody is required to follow the stress test rules in the country. And so we're no different, and buyers just have to navigate that at this point in time.
Are you noticing maybe a decline in younger people looking for homes because of the stress test?
I think some younger people are discouraged because they have to qualify at such a higher rate, and previous generations haven't had to do this stress test. I think, as long as you're borrowing fixed money for at least a 5-year term in Canada, I don't know that any of us can predict the future much more than 5 years anyway. So I'd like to see whatever that rate is to be the one that they can actually qualify for. So I think, to your point, there is some discouragement, but like I said, it's the world we live in, and we don't make the rules, we just have to live by them.
Now let's talk about advice you have for a young couple looking at buying their very first home. We had a couple of young couples here at the station bought their very first home. It was beautiful to see. But it's more than just the 5% down, isn't it? You've got the legal fees for your real estate lawyer. I mean, there's so much more, isn't it?
There is a little bit more. Legal fees can run somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 when you're purchasing a home. You also have to think about the property tax situation. That's the one that's often forgotten about, is at what point in the year are the property taxes due? And so while the property taxes are calculated to the day, depending on the time of year you buy, you may have to come to the closing table with a check to shore those up. Or in some cases, if you're buying earlier on in the year, you may receive a check from the sellers for the time they've occupied the home up to that point, to which you'll have a nice big property tax bill due in June anyways. So you do need to plan for these things.
You know, Sean, some people actually co-purchase a home, joining up with friends, parents, or siblings to share the mortgage. Are you seeing more of an increase in this type of home buying right now to make it more affordable?
In our market, I think things are pretty stable with that. Most home buyers are the only ones on the purchase contract. We do see co-signing from parents that are jumping in to help their kids buy a home. But I think in markets where prices are a lot more expensive than ours, you see a lot more of that. I looked at some statistics for markets like Toronto, Vancouver, and some of these expensive markets, and as much as 2/3 of all buyers are needing a co-signer to be able to purchase those very expensive homes. In Lethbridge, the nice thing we love about Lethbridge is that it's affordable, and $300,000, $320,000 is still a very affordable price tag in Canadian housing, when average home prices across the country are flirting with $500,000.
How well are some of the bedroom communities doing around Lethbridge, like Coaldale, Raymond, and even Nobleford?
I think they all have, there's all various reasons to move to these communities, of course, and people like the smaller town life. Places like Coaldale, it's really big lots that are out there for even the new building areas.
There's a great
like
bakery out there too, we
Nobleford,
can't forget, right?
there is a great bakery out of Coaldale, absolutely. And Nobleford is a neat place because their property taxes are so low. And so if you are looking at your overall cost to live, that's a place where almost everybody's property taxes are under $1,000 a year. And so, and still you're on, city water, municipal water and sewer, which is important to people. So places like that people that want the small town life, I think those places will flourish.
Sean, we only have about a minute left here. Let's talk about floor plans. As you get older, like myself, I'm not a big fan of the 2 stories anymore. 15 steps up, 16 steps down, 31 steps. I'm out. That's it. I'm done. I bought a bi-level. People love bungalows. What are you seeing right now? Are the baby boomers and the Gen Xers preferring less steps?
I think as everyone gets older, they prefer less steps. That's where it seems to be the trend. Once in a while, we get folks that, some seniors that are really fit and they want the 2 stories. They want to do those steps every day because they think that that's something that's going to help them in their activity. But I think most of us prefer one level living as we get older. So we're seeing that desire. But the flip side to that is land is at a premium. And when land is at a premium for new housing and new development, the builders would prefer 2-story homes because that's what they can fit in some of the lots that are provided. To get bigger homes, they have to be 2-story. So we're seeing a good mix out there. Of course, lots of bungalow and bi-level buyers, but as time goes on, especially when we go back to the west side where all the new development is, majority of those homes are 2-story homes.
And we can't forget about the 4-level and 3-level splits too, right? Great talking real estate with you, Sean. Thanks so much. Sean Ormston, CEO of Great Rate Realty. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Are you single? If so, it seems that there can be a lot of pressure on singles to get dating, to get a partner as soon as possible, and to get married. But is putting a rush on that really necessary, and is it the best way to go? Joining me now to talk about Singlehood a little bit further is Janice Riegel, the co-founder of Stirred Up Women's Ministry, the podcast host of Just Janice, and author of the book Slaying Singlehood, Celebrating Life in Every Season. Janice joins me now from Michigan. Welcome to Bridge City News.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here as well. So Janice, how would you best summarize your book, Slaying Singlehood, Celebrating Life in Every Season?
Well, I think the tagline summarizes my book the best, celebrating life in every season. And for me, currently being in a season of singleness and just learning to embrace all that God has for me during this season and to not rush out of this season. Like you said, sometimes we're in a season of life and we feel like we're just constantly waiting for the next thing. And so for me, this book talks about what to do in the season of life that you're in, whether you're single or not. Like I came up with the name Slaying Singlehood, but honestly, I've had a lot of married people read the book that have been like, this book is for everyone, no matter what season of life you're in, just learning and realizing that God has a purpose for every season.
Yeah, now does being single today carry the same stigma that it did in the past, that perhaps, hey, this person is undateable?
I think that's a stigma that's attached to singlehood. It probably always will be. But I do feel like culture definitely has learned to celebrate singlehood more. And there's a lot of people that are choosing to stay single longer. I think probably in times past, people, once you graduate high school or whatever, you feel like you have to settle down, get married, start a family. And I feel like nowadays culture isn't as pushy with that, so to speak. And so I think definitely culture is changing all around us all the time, but I definitely think there's more celebrating the season of singlehood now than probably there was in the past. Yeah.
Now, why do you encourage women not to cheapen singlehood or maybe even discount it?
I would say because I think a lot of times, like I kind of said, that like we kind of want to skate through whatever season of life we're in as quickly as possible. And especially people that are single, because you feel like your value is attached to your relationship status. And so to not cheapen this and the season of life and think that it's not valuable, because God has so much to do in and through you in whatever season you're in, but especially when you're single, because you do have no one to answer to, and you do have more time and whatever. So just not feeling like the season doesn't mean anything or hold any value. And for me personally, I've been single for 5 years now, and I have seen so much value and awesome things that God has done in and through my life. And so I just know from firsthand experience that the season of singlehood can be so beautiful and rich.
Now, Janice, do you also feel that maybe perhaps you're spending a little more time with the Lord now that you're single? You can focus on Him more?
For sure. This is such a sweet season of life. Just having him right now, and definitely, because my evenings are fairly open. I mean, I'm doing ministry and podcasts and things like that right now, but just having that time with him, and obviously eventually when God brings me a husband, we'll do that together. But yeah, the alone time where it's just me and him, and like sometimes I'll just go take a drive because I love driving. That's just like kind of one of my secret places, so to speak. So I just love getting in my car, taking off driving. It's just me and him with some loud music, spending time with him, whatever. So yeah, definitely.
Now, you suggest that rejection in a relationship can be God's way of really protecting us. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so rejection in a relationship. So I think a lot of us have probably faced relationships that we maybe thought were going to happen in our lives, and they either started and they were short-lived, or they just never started to begin with. And for me, I think just trusting the Lord that if a relationship that I think, it doesn't work out or doesn't pan out, just trusting his heart for me and knowing that he always has the best for me, and trusting that he does have someone in mind for us, and that, if he's made you that promise, that it will happen. And so if you find someone who you think may be a potential suitor, or you could see yourself in a relationship with, and it doesn't happen, just trusting his heart that, something that we might see as rejection, that God's actually just protecting your heart from heartache and from a relationship that he just doesn't see fit for your life, and just trusting that his ways are higher and his thoughts are higher, and just trusting his heart for you is a big thing for me.
Amen to that. Now, Janice, when a person is single, they often put a lot of time and energy into finding that partner, that life partner, or sometimes, they'll say, I give up. I'm going to grab a bucket of ice cream, some potato chips. I'm binge watching my favorite shows. I don't care. I'm packing on the pounds. I'm depressed. That's it. I'm out. Now, you actually encourage a lot of people not to be idle and to use their time a little more wisely. Can you explain?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, like spending time in God's presence and in his word are two huge things for me. And then from that place, learning to hear the voice of God and what he's calling me to do. And so for me during this season, I began a ministry called Stirred Up Ministries. And so I've been doing that for a few years and starting a podcast. And there are times when you get some ice cream if you need it. Like I've actually created an email for my husband just to like write him notes, let him know how I'm praying for him that day or whatever. And most emails I realized after like a bunch of them that they start out with, "Hey, how are you doing? I'm eating ice cream right now." And I'm praying for you about this. So like, whatever, if you want to have ice cream, have it, but just not letting yourself stay stuck in those moments of like despair, feeling like this is all my life will ever be, and just trusting the Lord in the process of your season, and knowing that he has things to do in and through you during this season. And so learning to hear his voice and just being obedient, whatever that is.
Listen for that still small voice. Now, Janice, for those who do isolate themselves, you say this is really the enemy. What advice do you have for those people who want to get themselves out there? As you know, we often agree, no man or woman should be an island.
Yes, I love that phrase. I use that phrase a lot. And we know, like in Proverbs, I use that scripture at the beginning of that chapter where I talk about creating community, that it's unwise to be isolated. And obviously there's a difference between having that alone time with the Lord, and we need that. Like that is so crucial, because I can actually fall on the other end of the spectrum where I'm constantly surrounded by people. And I have to make sure I scale back at times and have that alone time with the Lord, but not getting to a point where you're not surrounded by community. It's so important. We need each other to stay sharpened, to stay encouraged, to be able to call each other out and say, "Hey, like I've had so many friends that have been like, you're believing a lie of the enemy." And we're blindsided by him. I mean, like that's the art of deception, right? And so we don't realize that we're being deceived. And so just having people to pour truth into you and to champion you and encourage you. And so I would say find a good group of people, find a church to get yourself plugged into, find online communities. I know a lot of the world right now is still not allowed to meet or whatever. I'm fortunate to be in an area where I am able to attend church in person again. But if you don't have that, finding people, whether it's your neighbors or family, to surround yourself with, and make sure that those are people that are pouring into your life in a good way. So, yeah.
Now, if you do find other people getting on your case for being single, you're right, stop letting other people put their faulty appraisal on you. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I love what you said, like at the beginning of the interview, that sometimes, people can look at you and be like, well, what's wrong with her? Why is she still single? And I think it's so important that we realize that sometimes God has people in a season for a reason. Like God has called me to be in the season now for 5 years, which I like to jokingly say is 4 years and 364 days longer than I wanted to be single, but it's fine. And so just realizing that just because someone is single does not mean they're not worthy, does not mean that there's something wrong with them that you have to detect and figure out so that you can fix them so that a relationship can happen. And just not doing that to people, because our value is found in Christ, and he is the one that defines us and puts our value on us. And it's a high value that he puts on us. And so just not determining someone's worth based on the relationship status is so important.
Now, Janice, you talk about the importance of sexual purity, yet we live in a culture where hookups become expected almost. How can single Christians deal with that kind of pressure and temptation?
Accountability is huge. And I know that that's it's kind of a taboo thing for some people, not for everyone, but having that accountability, like for me, even right now, I've already started setting standards for when that relationship happens. Like I will not have someone in my home by myself, and people will think like, that's dramatic, that's drastic, but my purity is so important to me that I am willing to do those things, So just having accountability, having someone, even before you're in a relationship, like I have a prayer partner and I have mentors in my life that hold me accountable. So I would say accountability is huge, not just with sexual purity, but with your walk with the Lord on all sides.
So what advice would you give to someone who may have tripped up and compromised their sexual purity in the past?
The first scripture I think of, this is like one of my banner verses for my life, and it's those who look to him are radiant with joy, and their faces will never be ashamed. So not letting yourself stay in that place or feel like you're dirty or you're unworthy. And there's a song by Natalie Grant's called Clean, and it's such a beautiful song of just surrender to the Lord. And when you're in that place and you've surrendered and you've repented, like knowing that he truly does cast your sins as far as the east is from the west, and he forgets them. So even a few weeks ago, I had a friend tell me that they were repenting over something that they were, asking the Lord for forgiveness for. And they had said, I've asked him like 3 times to forgive me. And I said to them, like, the first time you asked for forgiveness, he forgot it. And the second and third time, he didn't know what you were talking about. So just realizing that God truly does forgive and forget. And I know that we are stuck in our human minds and that's hard to comprehend, but that God truly does. So don't stay in that shame, accept his forgiveness and let yourself walk free.
Is there anything a person can do while single to plan for marriage?
Yeah, there's so much you can do. And I talk a lot about a lot of those things in my book, but like healing from past hurts is huge. Like I think a lot of people enter into new relationships with baggage from their old relationships. And so for me, because I'd went through a very hard breakup in my past, dealing with all of those hurts and insecurities and the enemy lies and just letting myself, like Romans 12:2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, like letting myself be renewed, finding out what Christ says about me so that my identity in him is solid before I enter a relationship. And I've heard so many people that have platforms that talk about relationships, talk about that it's not God bringing like 2 halves together. It's 2 whole people that need to come together to have a healthy relationship. So for me, finding wholeness in Christ and satisfaction in my life now so that pressure is never put on someone else, that you're my source of happiness, I've been waiting for you to satisfy the longings of my heart. I've already found my satisfaction in Christ. So that's huge for me. There's so much we could say about that, for probably talk for hours about that, but those are the immediate thoughts I have. Yeah.
Janice Riegel is author of Slaying Singlehood, Celebrating Life in Every Season. Thanks for joining me today from Michigan.
Thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks for watching.